Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a fascinating piece of ancient text that honestly gets misunderstood a lot. People tend to read it as just a generic personal cry for help. But we're going to be unpacking Psalm 5 using a detailed commentary by Mark Bates, and we're totally reframing how we look at it. We're shifting it from a simple morning lament to a highly strategic legal petition presented right in Yahweh's heavenly court. So if you thought this was just a quiet, reflective morning devotional, we'll yearn for a surprise. What we're actually looking at is an ancient Davidic king presenting his case, and the theology behind it has massive implications.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. The Promise-Plan context, 2. The Morning Courtroom, 3. Access through covenant love, 4. The anatomy of deceit, and 5. New Testament echoes. Let's get right into it.
To truly get Psalm 5, we have to look at it through a very specific lens. And that brings us to our core focus for today, Promise-Plan Theology. As defined here, this is a framework popularized by scholar Walter C. Kaiser Jr. Basically, it emphasizes how God's covenant obligations, the necessity of sanctuary worship, and his unyielding righteousness progressively unfold over time. By looking through this lens, we see that David's personal mourning crisis isn't just about his own bad day. It actually anchors a crucial part of redemptive history. His experience is a vital thread in the unfolding of God's overarching promise plan.
Section 1. The Promise-Plan Context, the historical stage.
You know, the timing of this text is a huge clue. It's set in the morning, but in the cognitive environment of the Second Temple period and the wider ancient Near East, morning light was highly symbolic. It wasn't just the time of day you woke up and had your breakfast, it was the specific hour associated with divine judicial intervention and royal vindication. The Davidic king, who is the anointed representative of God's covenant people, is stepping into the light of dawn to present his legal cause. He's facing unjust accusation and hostile rebellion, and he is actively looking for a judicial verdict from the ultimate monarch.
Section 2. The Morning Courtroom, entering the liturgy.
The opening of the psalm is actually a formal liturgical offering, directed straight to the choir master. Notice how the petition escalates here. It starts with vocalized words, the Hebrew word amarei, but then it deepens into this intense internal groaning, or hagigi. And finally, it erupts into a completely urgent, desperate cry for help, shav'i. The psalmist is directly addressing Yahweh as my king and my God, purposefully taking his personal crisis and placing it right under the overarching authority of Israel's divine monarch. And this brilliantly illustrates the depth of the liturgy we're dealing with. The text repeats the word in the morning, or boker in Hebrew. But the real key here is the word erok, translated as prepare. Now, this isn't a casual, let me get my thoughts together kind of preparation. Erok is a highly specific, technical priestly term found in the Torah for arranging the morning sacrifice or carefully ordering the wood on the altar. So the psalmist is spiritually preparing his prayer exactly like a meticulous covenant offering. After arranging this spiritual sacrifice, he stands vigilant, watching in eager expectation for the judge's verdict.
Section 3. Access through covenant love. Who enters the court?
The rationale for the king's confidence rests entirely on the moral perfection of Yahweh. Unlike those unpredictable, chaotic deities of the ancient Near East, Yahweh is intrinsically opposed to corruption. And there is a stark contrast presented here. On the left side, we have the wicked. The text says evil cannot sojourn. The Hebrew word there is gur. Gur carries massive sanctuary implications. It means the unrepentant sinner absolutely cannot claim the rights of a guest or find any sort of asylum in Yahweh's holy tent. God actively abhors the bloodthirsty and the deceitful. But on the right side, the righteous are granted full access. But how exactly?
Well, the crucial point is captured perfectly in this quote from the commentary. David doesn't walk into the temple boasting about his own flawless track record. That's not how it works. He claims access to Yahweh's house and holy temple solely through the abundance of God's chesed. Chesed is this massive, incredibly rich theological term denoting God's active, covenant-based loyalty and merciful commitment to his promise plan. The entry requirement isn't human self-righteousness at all. It's God's steadfast love, paired with a posture of holy awe or reverence from the believer. It's this exact covenant faithfulness that guides the believer safely through the treacherous terrain of hostile enemies.
Section 4. The anatomy of deceit. Forensic examination.
Now, the psalmist analyzes the wicked by looking at their physical organs of speech, and it is incredibly visceral. Their inner core, or kurbam, is pure destruction.
Then we get this absolutely striking anatomical metaphor. Their throat is an open grave, kever patuak. It is literally exhaling the stench of moral decay. Finally, their tongue practices smooth flattery. These aren't just people saying mean things or gossiping. Their speech organs are actively committing high treason against the divine king.
Because this is a courtroom setting, the psalmist makes a formal judicial petition to the supreme judge to declare them guilty. The principle at play here is lex talionis. Basically, David is asking that the enemy's evil schemes and their own devious counsels recoil directly upon their own heads. The punishment has to match the fundamental transgression, which again is outright rebellion against the sovereign.
Section 5. New Testament Echoes, Canonical Ripples.
It is amazing how deeply this single psalm influences the New Testament writers. Let's look at this. The Apostle Paul explicitly quotes that open grave imagery in Romans 3 to prove that all humanity, Jew and Gentile alike, is accountable before God, necessitating justification by faith. Then, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus echoes the temple access theology of Psalm 5 when he says the pure in heart shall see God. The author of Hebrews builds right on this idea of entering the holy sanctuary through abundant covenant mercy. And the Apostle Peter draws directly on the concept of seeking refuge, or chasa, when he tells believers to cast their anxieties on God during times of hostile persecution. This brings us to our final theological synthesis. Psalm 5 brilliantly unites an early morning lament with unshakable, triumphant confidence. But even more importantly for redemptive history, the Davidic king's experience here directly prefigures Jesus Messiah, the ultimate righteous sufferer who presented his petition to the Father and was vindicated in the dawn of his resurrection. And crucially, as noted in the source text, this preserves a strict non-supersessionist integrity. What that means is the concrete historical realities, the Jerusalem temple, the Davidic monarchy, Israel's geographic security, they aren't just dissolved into abstract metaphors. They remain the covenantal bedrock. The inclusion of the Gentile nations into this divine refuge happens through solidarity with Israel's Davidic Messiah, completely fulfilling the promised plan without erasing ethnic Israel's distinct calling. The explainer of this psalm concludes with some of the most beautiful imagery in the entire text. The final verses guarantee that Yahweh blesses the righteous. His favor surrounds the believer like its sanah. Now, its sanah isn't some small little buckler. It is a massive, full-body shield. God's protective favor acts as a complete sovereign shelter for those who align with his covenant promise, securing ultimate safety and eschatological joy.
We've seen how Psalm 5 operates as an absolute masterclass in Promise-Plan Theology, transforming a morning of intense crisis into a secure courtroom of covenant grace. So I want to leave you with this question to ponder. When you're facing your own morning battles, those moments of unjust accusation or deep anxiety right at the break of dawn, are you relying on your own flawless track record, or are you stepping behind the full-body shield of God's steadfast covenant love? Think about where you truly place your trust for refuge. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep seeking clarity in the text.